So that deadly fire at a Bethesda tunnel house, the whole story surrounding this just keeps getting stranger. A judge in Montgomery County just ordered Daniel Beckwith released on $100,000 bail.
Now, prosecutors allege that Beckwith had kept the victim all but enslaved in those tunnels and unable to escape. Bruce LaShan just raced out of the courtroom, and he's got lots of new details. Bruce?
Prosecutors told the judge here that Daniel Beckwith had a paranoid fixation on North Korea and intercontinental ballistic missiles, that he dug an elaborate network of tunnels some 200 feet long under his Bethesda home because he was worried about the prospect of nuclear war. Now, he recruited a young man, Askia Khafra, to help him dig, and he led him blindfolded into the house by a string, kept him there, made him use use buckets to go to the bathroom down in the tunnels, which were powered by an elaborate system of electrical cables. A risky system, according to prosecutors. They say Khafra actually texted Beckwith just hours before the fire that killed him and said that he smelled smoke. Beckwith, instead of getting the young man out of the tunnels, allegedly just flipped a switch on the fuse box. Now, Beckwith's lawyer paints a very different picture. He admits that his client's behavior was odd, but he says that Khafra was a willing participant in digging those tunnels and actually bragged on Facebook about it.
He was not held against his will. That guy posted pictures of him in the tunnels in his garb and shared with his friends on Twitter and Facebook. Look at those things.
Now, all of this happened literally just above my own backyard. I was the first person on the scene of the fire. I tried to get into the burning house to rescue Khafra, but it was just too dangerous. And when I yelled in, "Are you in there? Is anybody in there?" there was no response. At Circuit Court in Rockville, Bruce LaShan, WUSA 9.
Remember that day and Bruce's efforts there. Prosecutors say Beckwith has a multi-million-dollar fortune that he amassed through day trading. His lawyer hopes to have him out of jail by tomorrow or Monday at the latest, but he still faces a second-degree murder charge that could send him to prison for 40 years.